This video is a follow-up to my previous video on seed oils, which you should definitely watch if you haven't already. In their responses to that video, several people asked me a very important question. If it's not the seed oils that are making us all sick, then what is it? The answer to that question is that a lot of things are making us sick. Environmental pollutants, uncontrolled stress, a lack of physical activity, a lack of community or a sense of connection. A lot of things can contribute to a poor quality of life for a person. When it comes to nutrition, it's not just one thing that's making us sick. Understanding how what we put into our bodies affects our health requires a broad view of dietary habits or patterns, as human diets do not consist of single foods or nutrients. We eat starches, which can be refined or unrefined, proteins, which can be animal-derived or plant-derived, fiber, which can come from fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, fats, which can be saturated or unsaturated, cis or trans, and so forth. Those are just some of the things that you would need to look at to really understand how a person's diet can contribute to them becoming unwell. So what does the science really say about why our diets can be making us sick? Basically, millions of Americans are succumbing to preventable diseases like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some forms of cancer, and so forth every year because most people are not following the basic tenets of good nutrition. Now, am I saying that all of these diseases are caused 100% by poor nutrition? No. However, nutrition plays a significant role in the etiology of these diseases, and that has been well established for a very long time. So what are these basic tenets? For the sake of brevity, I'm going to limit myself to just 5 of the basic tenets of good nutrition. Let's start with the first 2. Generally speaking, you should be eating about 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. That's 2 cup equivalents of fruits and 3 cup equivalents of vegetables per day. The exact amount will vary from person to person due to a variety of reasons, but that is the general guideline. Now, can you guess what percentage of the US adult population is actually eating the amount of fruits and vegetables that they're supposed to be eating? Something that everybody knows is good for them? Maybe 70%? No. That's too optimistic. Maybe we can say about half of the population in this country are eating their fruits and vegetables. I'm sorry to report that no, we're not even at 50%. National survey results show that just 12% of US adults meet the recommended daily intake for fruit and just 10% do for vegetables. So we can say that about 90% of the US adult population does not eat enough fruits and vegetables. It doesn't take a ton of scientific reasoning to see how this may have something to do with a lot of the poor health outcomes that we're seeing in this country. Now, which of these 2 things do you think is having a greater impact on the health landscape? The fact that 90% of US adults do not eat enough fruits and vegetables, or the fact that we consume seed oils, which have been shown in multiple large long-term studies to be better for your health than saturated fat? Published data on other nutrient-rich food groups show the same trend. Intakes of legumes, whole grains, and seafood are all below recommended levels across the nation. Those are tenets 3, 4, and 5, by the way. This data is publicly available and very easy to find with a quick Google search. Just type in USDA Dietary Guidelines 2025 and the first result should be a PDF of the nation's dietary guidelines, which include not only information on what we should be eating, but also data on what we're actually eating and how the ideal compares to the reality. If most Americans had their bases covered when it comes to these basic tenets of nutrition, I'm pretty certain that we would see far fewer cases of preventable, non-communicable diseases in this country, and we'd also save a ton of money on healthcare. But it's boring to tell people to eat more fruits and vegetables. We're tired of hearing that. And that's how we end up with this focus on single foods or single nutrients for health. But unfortunately, I think that takes away focus from the real problem. And I don't blame the public because I don't think you can blame people for falling for these distractions. Life is hard, and so it's appealing to have one simple trick or just one thing that you can do to completely revolutionize your health if that's all you feel like you really have the time or the wherewithal to do. It's far easier to put a tub of beef tallow in your cart, for example, and feel a sense of accomplishment than it is to prepare healthy, balanced, nutritious meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week for your entire family. Eating well takes intentionality, planning, and a whole lot more effort than putting just one superfood into your cart and calling it a day. Still, if you actually want to take care of your body and have as many years of being healthy in mind and body as possible, you have to operate by the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, states that 80% of the outcomes that you get come from 20% of the inputs. In other words, to make the most impact on any particular goal that you have, it is vital that you focus on those few elements that will have the greatest effect. When it comes to nutrition, that 20% is the basic stuff that I just talked about, making sure that you're eating plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and seafood, especially fatty fish. There is, of course, more that goes into having a healthy diet, but those basic things are going to get you miles down the road on your health journey. Something else that I want to point out is that the dietary guidelines were not just pulled from thin air, unlike many of the recommendations that you might come across on social media. These guidelines are based on multiple, well-designed research studies with thousands of participants that are specific enough to tell us the effective dose for different food groups. We know how many servings of fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, seafood, fish, and so forth you need to eat per day or per week to ward off disease and add years to your life. Thanks to decades of research by dedicated scientists who have a much better idea of what goes into a healthy diet than a random person on the internet who has a vendetta against seed oils because of just 1 or 2 studies. And just a reminder, I too am a random person on the internet, so you should not take anything that I say as personalized nutrition advice. I'm just here to report the evidence, and I will always provide you with links to the data so that you can read those research papers yourself if you so choose. All right, so here is a summary of what we know. Eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day has been shown to boost longevity and reduce the risk of dying from cancer, heart disease, and respiratory diseases. Eating 3 to 4 servings of beans or legumes per week is associated with a lower risk of heart disease. And a higher intake of beans or legumes in general is associated with longevity, with this analysis showing a 6% reduction in mortality for every additional serving of legumes per day. By the way, 1 serving is about half a cup of cooked beans. Eating 2 to 7 servings of whole grains per day is associated with a lower risk of heart disease and death from cancer, respiratory diseases, and infectious diseases, and is also associated with longevity. Eating at least 2 servings of fish per week lowers your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Lastly, diets rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, as well as nuts, lean meats, and healthy plant-derived fats have been shown to be highly effective at helping people to manage their blood sugar and body weight. These are the things that we need to be focused on. Again, there are other factors that go into having a healthy and balanced diet, but these 5 basic things are woefully ignored despite how critical they are. I also must mention that the things that we're eating in place of the foods that we're not eating that we should be eating also contribute to why the US healthcare system is overburdened by preventable diseases. Intake of seed oils has gone up in recent decades, but do you know what else we're eating way too much of? Ultra-processed foods. In this publication from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the authors found that in the past couple of decades, the intake of ultra-processed foods in this country has significantly increased. A greater intake of ultra-processed foods has been associated with weight gain, high blood pressure, heart disease, and some forms of cancer. Something else that deserves our attention is the intake of added sugars. On a positive note, intake of added sugars is actually going down in this country, mainly because people are drinking less sugar-sweetened beverages. Nevertheless, average intake of added sugars is still above recommended limits. The recommendation is that we limit our intake of added sugars to just 10% of our total calories for the day. So we are making progress, but we still have some work to do. To conclude, we have to think of our diets the same way that we think about a house. To build a house, you have to start with a solid foundation. Then you add some walls, a roof, your electrical wiring, plumbing, insulation, all those things. Those things are what you start with. And until you get those things done, it doesn't make sense to worry about what brand of light bulbs you want to put in the living room. The focus ought to be on getting the most important elements of your diet down before you worry about buying certain supplements or powder or specific brands of extra virgin olive oil. Build a house before you worry about the accoutrement. All right, so that is all for today. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like it, share it, and subscribe for more content like this. And definitely leave your comments below. I would love to hear what you think about this ongoing debate about seed oils and what's really causing America to be so sick. Take care.